Let's be totally clear. There's no such thing as singing with an open throat. I hate to burst your bubble, but there's just not. I mean, have you seen the diagrams? If you're looking at the anatomy of the throat, there's your pharynx, your larynx, your tongue. All this stuff is getting in the way of singing with an open throat. And you should be grateful that you have all those things because they're what makes you sound like you. I know this sounds crazy, but actually a lot of the things that make you sound unique and like yourself are actually the things that get in the way of the sound vibrations that are getting created by your vocal cords. But that doesn't change the fact that most people feel that when they're singing well, they have the feeling of an open throat.
Yeah, it just feels really open and clear back there.
So let's talk about what creates that open throat feeling and how you can find it every time. Now, in my experience, there are basically 2 times when singers feel like they're singing with an open throat. By far, the most popular time when people feel like they're singing with an open throat is when they're singing with more vocal cord closure for the first time. By the way, in case you're not familiar, the vocal cords are just folds of mucus and membrane and other tissues that come together and vibrate against the air from your lungs. But if you're singing too breathy, oftentimes it can make your voice feel really tight.
It's just really tight today.
So instead of that, singing with an open throat is more the feeling of singing with more vocal cord closure. So we're gonna try an exercise to help you find that right now, if that's an issue for you. So guys, we're just gonna try right here, and we're just gonna sing a 3-tone arpeggio like this on ah, like you're saying apple. And it's really important that it has that edge, it has that cut to it. So rather, ah, we want that ah. Go ahead and try that with me now. Ah. Do you feel how kind of open that feels? Because it's really buzzy, and that's the feeling of the vocal cords closing. Ladies, let's do the same thing right here. So, ah. And again, rather than that, ah, which kind of feels really tight and constricted, then ah feels really open. But let's be clear, your throat is quite closed with this ah exercise. Your tongue is very forward and fronted, your larynx is a little bit high, and maybe your soft palate is even a little bit low. These are all conditions that make for a very, very constricted back of your throat. But again, the most important thing is having that feeling of the open throat. That open throat feeling is what makes people feel like they're really, really singing well. For another example of kind of a deceptive vowel, try to sing an E vowel. We can try it on the exact same pitch. So for guys, like an E. Ladies, same thing right here. E. Even though that feels very resonant and very, very open, actually it's anything but. The E vowel is about the most close vowel and the most fronted that your tongue can be, and there's just very, very little resonating space in your throat. My point is that it's very difficult at any time to figure out, what's open and what's closed, because you don't at any time know exactly what the vocal resonators are doing. The most important thing, though, is that you're finding the feeling and you're following that. Now, the second time when people feel like they're singing with an open throat, I want to point out that this is more rare and it happens less, but I do experience this in lessons oftentimes with students that I've been teaching for a while, is when they're singing with a lower or more resting larynx posture. The larynx, in case you're not familiar, is your voice box or your Adam's apple. It's the thyroid cartilage that holds the vocal cords inside of it. And just like a passenger within a car, if the larynx is high, the vocal cords are going to be tight. And, if the larynx is low, then the vocal cords are going to be looser. So whatever happens to the larynx position also happens to its passengers, the vocal cords. So when I say that the larynx is lower or, more resting, we're going from for instance, like an ah to an ah, or even an oh. having a really low larynx. But in my experience, this movement feels really manipulated to a lot of singers at first. And even though it's a very, very useful tool to help someone relax and lower their larynx sometimes, oftentimes it feels like they're singing opera, which sometimes to them, oftentimes does not feel like it's a very open throat, even though it is more open. So compared to that ah exercise that I gave you a minute ago, this oh is way, way more open in the throat because the larynx is more lowered, the soft palate is higher, and that opens up more space in the back of the throat. So if you want to feel this for yourself, all you need to do is choose a note, pretend to yawn as you sing it. So let's just try it on a gug, and really kind of go kind of goofy and kind of yawny and kind of dopey with it. So like a gug, 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 gug. That's the low larynx right there. Let's do the same thing for ladies right here. So gug, 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 gug. And again, many people will feel that this is open in their throat and other people won't. It's just very individual. And remember that just because you feel that your throat is open, it doesn't mean that it actually is. And whoever said that singing with an open throat was a good thing anyway? Obviously, they didn't study their anatomy. The most important thing in all of this kind of open throat, closed throat kind of stuff is that it feels good to sing and it sounds good to you. If it doesn't sound good to you, what's the point? Guys, I hope you found this helpful. And just remember, if you've been wandering through YouTube land, a lost little lamb and trying to sing better, haven't maybe experienced the results that you've wanted to, consider getting personal feedback on your singing by enrolling in my complete singing course, Master Your Voice.